I'm going to move on now to Chris Boardman, who I think all of you know who he is, but he is Greater Manchester's Walking and Cycling Commissioner. Are you there, Chris?
I am. Infamous, I think.
Hello, hi. Great. I'm going to mute myself and hand over to you, and then we'll do some questions. Thanks.
Okay, well, I'll try and be brief. I mean, that was great. Thank you very much, Sarah. One big thing that I've been discussing earlier today that we really need is, we know the noise is coming, and we know the expertise is out there, and I think it's right at the top of my to-do list after today, to get that expertise here so we can use it and make sure it's funded, and we get ahead of the game. So thank you very much for that. It's been very thought-provoking for me. So I'll whistle through a little bit of an update. More than happy to answer questions, but as you might have seen, well, we know for people who haven't been here before, I'm sure you all have, that, you know, it was what, 2.5 years since we delivered our plan for a beam network, and we're finally starting to see it being delivered. So we announced last week the first 55 miles of infrastructure will be in next year, worth about £85 million. And it's not as much as I wanted, but it is a commitment to deliver 55 miles by the end of next year. And I'm going to count that at least as some kind of a win. We want to see the first beam network signage going in this year. We know we've announced that we will have a bike hire on the ground in spring next year. It will be the start, phase 1, with an initial fleet of about 1,500 bikes. So we're going to start that in Salford, Trafford and Manchester. So that is months away. On the temporary infrastructure stuff, which has been really painful for a lot of different reasons, it's been done on the hoof, but 25 miles of that infrastructure is being delivered, and 2 active neighbourhoods are going in. One of the things, just to go off on a slight tangent, I really like about that, the opportunity presented to us by temporary, is it helps us take away some of the fear to do things that we want to be permanent. Listen, we'll give this a go for the people who don't have cars, a third of GM residents, about half in Manchester, I think it is. And if it doesn't work after a few months, 6 months, we'd take it out, but let's give it a go. So I think there's a real opportunity there. If we get our funding for tranche 2, which government has put back, there'll be 49 miles of pop-up infrastructure in total. So, and even more pop-up neighbourhoods as well. So we're still waiting on that one. I'll also interject, I think, because of the reasons, that things that we've just been listening to and what we're discussing, your support is now, I mean, now is your moment, to use the cliche. Your support has never been more important than right now, because as these changes come in, there will be pushback. And I think there's less than 10 questions that people are going to ask about the displacement of traffic, about where am I going to park, it's causing more pollution, all of those things, they've been dealt with elsewhere. So it's heartening to see that you're already availing yourself of the expertise that's been garnered the hard way in places like London. We are ramping up to be more transparent about schemes in the coming weeks. A new web platform is at last coming online, ostensibly because Kirsty McCaskill-Battery, who might be lurking in the background, is back in post after maternity leave and starting to ask questions and irritate people in a good way. And we hope that will be a one-stop shop for, or we intend it to be a one-stop shop for all things cycling. There's a progress report going to the Transport Committee, so that's available now. Lots of information in there, lots of truths that need to be faced. So you might want to avail yourself of checking that out. And I think that's probably it, really. I'd rather spend the time answering questions that you have. So back over to you, Helen.
Okay, well, we're coming in thick and fast, but I'll kind of start from the top. There's a question about bike hire. Do you know yet where the docking locations are going to be? I want to know, has it got a special name? What's the kind of Boris Bikes equivalent for Greater Manchester?
No, I'd quite like them to be called B bikes, but I think it's quite nice for Burnham and it fits with everything else. But we just run into so many problems with there is B bike already, and I don't want to get into that right now. I think first of all, this week we're getting out to tender for the finalists to come in, we've already been out there. We'll go out to tender this week to say, right, the shortlisted people, let's hear what you've got to say. So we're at the closing stages now, but ultimately it's a private concern and they've got to have a big say in that. As far as where the stations go, work's being done in the districts now to try and run in parallel to get ahead of the game, to identify all the sites where people need to be. So you're never going to be more than, say, 5 minutes from a hire bike.
Great. There's a question about the A56 temporary bike lane that Trafford put in, that many of us were very excited about, that sort of they've already rode back on it. Your thoughts on that, and also the fact that this temporary infrastructure that was proposed all stops at the Manchester boundary. Is that a source of frustration?
Well, I think what it's highlighted is that the Mayor, in this sense, has the cash and is a coordinating force, but doesn't have power over the roads. And so we can create a plan and we can look at the propensity to cycle in an area and we can say where you're going to get best return. Most importantly, at the moment, the point of the temporary infrastructure is to help people who would normally rely on public transport, which is supposedly running at about 30%. So there are hundreds of thousands of journeys of less than 5 miles happening around Greater Manchester, particularly around Manchester, where people can't use public transport. And so for me, it's a social justice issue. Not everybody sees it the same way. And I think the Trafford route, I'm kind of half on that, because it was a very bold thing to do. They did it. They put in a huge amount. It was probably the longest in the country. And then they got badly shot at when they started to take pieces out. And everybody sort of forgotten that they were the first one to have a go. I think the Talbot Road, that runs parallel, they're very keen to utilise that and do more with that. I know Brian Deegan is on this call. I don't know if you just want to jump in and add anything to that, Brian, that might be helpful.
On what particularly? Sorry.
A56.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'll talk on that one. So I think there's a pretty good news story on the A56. It did exactly what the government asked, like the segregated, like a major road into town to provide an alternative for buses, and the stage right now is making it all permanent. So from my perspective, I'm not just spinning this, we're trying to make it permanent. So we're doing the first section, we're looking at like sorting out the side roads, making sure you get across those junctions, because there were some pretty serious issues with it, and it's still the longest pop-up cycle lane that's going to be permanent in the UK. And I think to an extent they want to prove the case with it by making it permanent, getting it all solid, ironing it out, and then making the case to do the extension. So I still think the plan is to do the full one. We just did a trial, and for me it's a meaningful trial of it if you make decisions based on it. So they made a decision to keep the majority of it and to put some other stuff further down the line. Now, if we'd been looking at that corridor like before COVID, we could have spent like 5 or 6 years planning it easily, and knowing us another 8 or 9 years trying to get the damn thing built. But they've done it as part of the emergency, and we're keeping a large percentage of it, and hopefully the plan still is to continue the whole way, and there are alternatives that are being worked up as part of the B network. So for me, it's still one of the best things done in the country, and they're keeping the lion's share of it. And yeah, we all want it to continue forever, and I know Trafford do as well, but we're just phasing the delivery of it. So try not to be all diplomatic there, but I think it's really good. I think it's a great scheme, and the improvements we're planning to it should really see it stand out as one of the best routes in the country. So I'm really excited about it.
Thanks, Brian. Helen?
Yep. What about, somebody's asking, do you think that these temporary lanes have been a good illustration of how much desire there is for people to cycle safely, given that so many people have been working from home? I mean, there's been lots of complaints that that the lane is empty a lot of the time in this A56 one.
Well, I think something's going to. Well, first of all, it's going to be empty to start with, because you don't turn culture change on in a couple of days. And yeah, people are working from home. The point is, for me, is it's not for cyclists; it's for the people who don't have a car right now, and that's what that space is there for. And I think that's the reason to keep it. We kind of brought things to a head, I think, we've done it in quite a clunky way because we've done it really quickly, but we brought things to a head by saying, right, we want you to do this. In fact, we insist that you do this. We insist that you do it very quickly. Go. And if you don't do it, that's entirely up to you, but it's going to affect all your future funding. And I think I quite like it. It's very disruptive. I think it's addressing a genuine social justice issue in the short term. And we found out what we needed to know.
The question from Mike Broomhead about how can we ensure speed as well as quality. There's been a lot of impatience about how long it's taken to get going. And when you ask councils, when are you going to put in that new crossing, they say, well, we'll try and do it by 2023. How can we help speed things up?
Well, there's a couple of things that are a little bit controversial. So first of all, speed is great, but I'll take quality. There's a minimum standard, which is what we have. I mean, the 12-year-old standard is a minimum standard to get meaningful culture change, to give people who wouldn't ride a bike, I mean, you just heard Sarah's story, to actually go and do it. And anything less than that will waste public money. So we're not doing that. And if it means we have to go slower than we wanted, then we go slower, but we don't do it badly. And I think that was a conversation I had with the mayor in the last couple of days, who incidentally rode 35 Ks in from home with me, something he's done a couple of times now the other day, and got to see it firsthand, which I think is invaluable. If you can get a political leader to do that, it's absolutely invaluable. Look at what it did for the PM. So I think speed's important, and I think the government can help us put the pressure on it in that regard. And I think we can do it locally, because we have, at the moment, we've given schemes programme entry, and they've gained programme entry, but we have a time limited fund. And I think if we're not seeing progress very soon, then we'll start to look at reallocating those funds to people who want to go quickly. So I think we can start to inject some more pace there. It's not something that's been done in the past, but I'm quite keen that we do.
That sounds like a good threat that we can remind the councils of. I think it's going to have to be the last couple of questions, really, because we're already running a bit behind schedule. There's a question about Metrolink and future Metrolink lines, making sure there's a missed opportunity sometimes to get safe cycle lanes going alongside Metrolink. Do you have discussions with Metrolink about their expansion plans and how they ensure walking and cycling's?
I think the very short answer is not specifically. I think probably the more informative answer is to go slightly sideways and say that I think the biggest, I was quite nervous about bringing in a director in Richard Nixon. It's turned out to be extremely useful. I mean, no way would we have announced.
Can you explain who he is for those who don't know?
Richard Nixon is the programme director for cycling and walking. So somebody on the inside who knows how the system works, got a lot of experience, and is across all of those desks and all of those departments, and is in all of those conversations. And that's proven really useful. So even the report that's just about to go to the Transport Committee that states we will deliver 55 miles by next year, councils don't like that kind of commitment. And Richard has a position where he said, right, this is what you're telling me in your programmes that you're going to deliver and by when. And so we're going to make it public. We like open government. We're going to put it out there. And he's really been very, very effective. So I think with, as far as any future development with the trams are concerned, it would be crazy not to integrate the two things when it's the obvious thing to link up public transport, cycling and walking, because they should be partners. And I don't think we're going to get any pushback for that.
Great. Okay, I'm going to take the last two questions, which are from Jill Moore and Sue Heighton. Jill's asking, bikes on trams in Greater Manchester, which was one of our goals when we launched WRGM. Is it a non-starter to campaign for them to be allowed? And Sue asks, where do e-bikes fit into the plan?
Okay, so my personal opinion, I think bikes on trams out of hours, why not? I think both the tram and the train companies were quite surprised when I've met with all of them, when I wasn't pushing for it, because the amount of people that it can service is so small. I think the energy can be best used elsewhere. I'm somebody who would quite like to be able to take my bike on a train all the time, because as a lot of you know, I don't have a car now. So when I had to go and see Andy Burnham the other day, it was a real pain. But I know that even if we get that, even where it's done in Holland, it's servicing a very small amount of people. So the focus for me is on making sure you have secure bike parking at the home end and your destination end, and bike hire, so you can make it part of your journey, but you don't necessarily have to take it on public transport. I think it's even if we win this one, you're talking a couple of hundred people a day, and I think we need to think much bigger of that, at least at the moment.
And the other question was about e-bikes and where they fit into the plan.
Well, e-bikes are a massive part of the future, no question. They are a part of the bike hire scheme. To what proportion, I don't know yet. We have discussed the potential last year of all of our hire bikes being e-bikes. So if the capability is going to be baked in from the start, and there will be a proportion. It may be strategic to start with, where when we roll out to hillier parts of GM, that they become part of the solution. But no doubt that they will be a big part of it. We found in the Netherlands, what we've seen in the Netherlands, how they're going intra-urban with the bike paths, because people are travelling between conurbations, not just to transport hubs, simply because of e-bikes. And I've got no reason to doubt that isn't going to happen here.
Thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time to talk to us tonight. I'm sorry for everybody whose questions we haven't got around to. You can always try and get Chris to answer them on Twitter, whether he will or not. But yeah, it means a lot to us that you take the time. So